Hi, I'm Kylie, Wolfig from Thyroid School, and what motivates me to write is that I have always written. I have always found that that's the best way for me to communicate and get my feelings across. There's a magic in words that on the paper that you can't get when you speak. You can put intent behind them, you can put feeling behind them, you can be particular. There's something very magical about words, and I have always written since I was about 10 years old, so it's not hard for me to get up and write every day. A good story to me is something that comes full circle, a story where you learn about yourself through the characters of the book or through the content of the book. Even I write non-fiction, so if I can read a non-fiction book and find a story in that um, that I can relate to myself, that makes me feel like I'm not alone, that's what makes a good story to me. So same with characters that I can relate to, characters with real problems, with real everyday issues. I relate so much to a good story that incorporates that and makes me feel like I'm not alone. As a child, believe it or not, I wanted to be a writer for as long as I can remember, although I didn't picture myself writing non-fiction books about thyroid disease. I still have many books in my head that are fiction, that are fantasy, that are adventure fantasy books. And I think that the non-fiction books that I've written so far have given me the courage to step forward and one day write the fiction stories that also include the idea of healing, the idea of that you can do more than you think you can. So, from as far as I can remember, when I first started borrowing books out of a library, I used to fantasize about being a writer. In high school, I was in a writers' club, so I've always thought that would be the dream. I have written 5 books so far that are out to the public, and 4 I have self-published, and then my most recent one is with Isabella Media. And I am not sure which is my favourite, to be honest. They've all done something or played a certain part in my life. Probably this one that's coming out now, the Thyroid Encyclopedia, simply because it was huge and I didn't think I'd get through it, to be honest. So that would have to always play a huge part in my heart because I actually got it finished. So, but all of them, it's like children. They all play a part in my world and why they were written. My advice for becoming a better writer is to not edit yourself so much. You'd be surprised how often you write something that you think, oh, that's garbage, and yet other people love it. That would be my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice would be to write how you speak, depending on what you're writing, of course. But I find for non-fiction, I've had a lot of readers tell me, oh, Kylie, I love reading your books because it's like I'm having a conversation with you because I write like I speak. I don't formalize it or anything like that. So perhaps try writing in your own voice and see what happens. My other piece of advice I learned long ago is if you're really stuck and you don't know what to write, start with the words I remember and see what comes up. And often that can get you started. I actually do hear from my readers because a lot of them are on thyroid school. So because I'm on there most days, I interact with them. I actually had a really funny one a couple of days ago. Somebody messaged me and she actually quoted another book to me, which I found hilarious. And she said at the bottom of a text, as you said in your last book, Thyroid Habits, blah, 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 blah. And I said back to her, I said, did you just quote my own book to me? And she said, yes, it was such a good book. So I find when people say things like that, often there are things I've forgotten I've written. And so that's quite a buzz to think, oh, my information's helping people. My information is making a difference in their world, which is why I'm doing it. When I'm not writing, I am pretty much making websites and branding with people. So my through doing my own website for thyroid school and learning about branding and marketing and so on, I found I really enjoyed it and I had a knack for it. And so when I'm not writing, that's what I'm doing. I'm building websites and helping people with branding and helping them to discover the possibilities of their own business. My family are very proud, as far as I know, of my writing. My mother has thyroid disease, so she reads every word. Um, I don't think my husband's read any of my books, to be honest, because he doesn't have thyroid problems. But it's always been him that has encouraged me to write. So he has always been the person to sort of say, you know, you need to write another book. So I think that they're all proud of me, and yeah, I think it's just part of their world and my world now. I don't think anybody really thinks too much of it, to be honest. I think the most surprising thing I learned while writing my books is that you can get sick of the sound of your own voice in your head. Oh, and your brain never switches off. It is always thinking about the next lot of words. You can go to sleep, but you will go to sleep thinking about it and you will wake up thinking about it. It is really hard to get out of your own world. The ideas for my books simply came about because I needed them. After 29 years with thyroid disease, all the books I've written about thyroid disease are ones that I wish I had. And particularly this last one, the Thyroid Encyclopedia, it's basically a compilation of all my notes that I've kept since I started studying, since I became a naturopath, and they're all in index books all over the place. And whenever I was answering questions on thyroid school, I'd think to myself, God, it would be really great to have these all in one book where I could just quickly go through and answer the question if I couldn't remember it, because there's so much to remember. And so all of these books came about because I needed it. What's that old saying? If you can't find a book you're looking for, write it. So that's what I've done. My very first book, I was 10, 11, somewhere like that, and it's an adventure book of two young children, which I have never ever published or gone back and finished. So my first real published book was when I was studying naturopathy, and I was writing a recipe book because of how I ate. I ate out of jars of food to keep healthy and to be organized. And so I started writing it on, I got a MacBook for the first time, and on there was the iBooks author program just automatically on that, and so I had to play with it. And then my younger brother Jonathan, he said to me that, because I told him that I had started it, and he said to me that if it was finished by a certain date that I wouldn't have to pay, because they were going to start charging people to be able to lodge them, which was a complete lie. But it made me actually get the book finished. And so that was my first book, and that was in 2012, I think. So a cookbook, although my first book at the age of 10 was a children's adventure book. My first book on iTunes was Thyroid Food Habits. No, is that right? I can't even think of what it's called now. Thyroid Jar Food, that's it, Thyroid Jar Food. And that was thanks to a lie from my brother. So awesome. Each book is different as to the length of time because of the size of the book. My smallest book didn't take me very long at all, a couple of weeks. This last book took me 6 months of non-stop, flat out. Before my deadline, in the week before my deadline, I was doing 18 and 20-hour days to get the book finished. So it really depended on which book it was as to the length of time, and you can always go back and change it a million times and try and make it better and better. So it's kind of up to you as to when you stop it and say that's enough now. My work schedule when I'm writing is, it's pretty different all the time because I have to make my writing in and around everything else, seeing clients, doing websites, graphics, answering questions on Thyroid School. Because of so many other things, I tend to just sit down and write when I'm ready, when I have the time, and I just start. I don't have any strange timetables or get up at 4 a.m. or anything like that. I tend to get more of my work done in the mornings, and my husband works week on, week off, so I tend to do most of my writing in the week that he's at work so that I can have time off when he's at home. What is my most interesting quirk as a writer? I would say I have to have everything outlined, and I have to have a vision for the end of the book and how the whole thing's going to look before I can let it happen. I watched a masterclass with James Patterson once, and he said how he starts a book is to write one sentence for every chapter of the book, and then he fills it out from there. And I love that, and so that's kind of what I do from a perspective of all, even though they're non-fiction. I have a sentence for every chapter and have it all, as my husband would say, wrapped up in a neat little bow. And then when I know that it is all going to work out and it all makes sense, then I go ahead and write the book. First realised I wanted to be a writer when I was really young, writing stories. We were staying at a friend's house in a place in Australia called Gympie, and I was the only girl in the bunch of all the boys. They were playing cricket. I was sitting on the stairs writing a story, and I was sitting there thinking, I can write stories anywhere in the world, and that's really when I cemented in my head and my heart that I want to be a writer.